Welcome to another edition of Poets Have Something to Say. This show is getting more fun all the time. We have a great guest with us, current Wisconsin Poet Laureate Brenda Cárdenas. Was born and raised in Milwaukee, and she's authored Truce, a winner of the 2023 Society of Midland Authors Award for Poetry, and silver winner of the Forward Review's Indie Poetry Prize. Boomerang, and 3 chapbooks. She's a very busy writer, very productive. She also co-edited the anthologies Resist Much, Obey Little, Inaugural Poems to the Resistance, Between the Heart and Land, Latina Poets in the Midwest. Her poems have been published in anthologies and literary magazines such as Poetry, American Poetry Review, Prairie Schooner, the Library of America's Latino Poetry Anthology, among many others. Cardenas has enjoyed collaborating with musicians, composers, visual artists, and choreographers, and we'll certainly get into that during the program. Cardenas has enjoyed collaborating with many people. In 2024, her poem, Para los Tintunteros, set to choral music by Daniel Alfonso, was performed by the National Concert Choir at Carnegie Hall. And she's currently Professor Emerita of English at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where she taught creative writing and U.S. Latin literatures. And she serves on the board of directors at Woodland Pattern, a poet and artist-run nonprofit book center, gallery, and performance space in Milwaukee. And wow, that's amazing. Brenda Cárdenas, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you. And being a Wisconsin Poet Laureate must be a fascinating thing. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But as we do, as modeled after our friend Jeremy Jusick, we're going to be starting with a poem. Can you read us one of your poems?
You bet. So this one's in my book, Trace, and it's called Against Insularity. Let us push air into our splenetic bubbles until they contain brimming worlds we can plunge into. Blood orange skies tinged with lavender beyond the horizon we've never traversed. Across the line we've never transgressed. Time to purge our stampeding litanies, pistol-whipped plans sutured to impossible futures, manacled to metal desks and manicured lawns. Be with me a forest of deciduous trees, lizard wrinkled, century of rings rising to silver-streaked clouds. All our granular wreckage, our tin pan scraps, are bursting with viridian tympany. Light the cosmic fire, feed it with lungs the size of ship's bellows. Spark celestial candles. They will cluster into amethyst constellations like the lilacs we were born to be.
You have so many layers and beautiful imagery. Thanks for sharing that poem with us. What were you thinking? What motivated you to do that poem?
Oh, I guess I was thinking about what I see as the problems in society that come from people's views of the world being too insular, right? Like not open enough to the vast plethora of so many different kind of peoples and cultures and the richness that we have right at our fingertips there, right? That oftentimes I think we ignore and we forget. I was also thinking about the importance of community, right? And that, being in community with others, no matter what that community is, whether it's the poetry community, right?
Right.
Whatever it is, that sort of, and I was thinking about the image of the lilac at the end, because it's all those tiny little buds, all those tiny little flowers together that form that cluster that becomes the big flower, right? On the tree or the bush, right? And so I just want a world that's more like that, right?
Right. Beautiful.
Community is so important to me. And so that was part of it. The other thing is that I write every Friday morning with a women's writing group on Zoom. And we've been at it now since the pandemic, and there's a lot of us. There's like 22 of us. Not everybody shows up every week, but every people consistently come back, and we do an exercise with a word grid, and so a lot of times it helps me to get very fresh turns of phrases, those exercises we do. And I think that poem was born it started in that group.
Mm-hmm. The poem speaks to me of the freedom to open up and really see the world for all its glory, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Yeah.
Brenda Cárdenas is our guest. I'm very honored to have the Wisconsin Poet Laureate with us. Now, you serve until you were named fairly recently, right?
Almost a year ago now.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Where it was January. So, at the end of this year, it'll be the end of my first year, but it's a 3-year term. So I still have 2 more years to go.
And you took over for Nick Gulig, who we had on the show a couple of years ago. He's a fascinating poet as well.
Yeah, he sure is. He's an incredible poet and person, human being.
A little bit later in the show, I want to also get into what your plans are for being a Wisconsin Poet Laureate. But just some more basic questions. What was the first poem you ever wrote that made you feel like a poet? Was there one you can point to where you're thinking, wow, this is the real thing?
Oh, wow.
That's quite a question. I'll put you on the spot there a little bit.
That would be going back a long, long time. I wrote many poems before this particular poem, but there was a poem I wrote when I was very young. I was in my 20s, called Letter to an Ancestor. And it was actually a letter to Lázaro Cardenas, who had been the president of Mexico in the 1930s and was related to my grandfather.
Wow.
It was like second cousins. It wasn't like, they saw each other, right? But yeah. They were related. And that poem, I guess, made me feel that way because it was actually printed on the Woodland Pattern used to send out for their events through the mail. I was going to be a featured poet for the first time there, and they send out like a flyer with a poem by each of the poets. They would usually pair poets, right? And so my poem and my picture were on one side, and the other poet, his poem and his picture were on the other side. And I got a call shortly after that reading from another poet, a well-known poet in Chicago, who called me up and said, and I don't know how he even got my number, just out of the blue, and said, "Were you really related to Lázaro Cardenas?" And I said, "Yeah." Yes. And we started talking, and that brought me into a whole community of Chicago Latino poets, right? That I would have never known otherwise, right? And so, I think because the poem was printed, it was my first featured reading, all of that. I guess I'd go back to that one, even though I had written much before that. That one was sort of pivotal.
We have a lot of open mics around here, and I'm sure you've done a ton of them. I know Tom Cannon, the Oshkosh Poet Laureate, is doing a great job in the Oshkosh area. There are, and then you've got Appleton has a very active, and I've been to both places. And what do you get from reading your work live? Is there something that's, number one, is there something that's sort of special about that? And number two, does it empower your writing somehow to perform your words? Is there sort of something that catches fire there?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you're going back to the oral tradition of poetry, right? When you're declaiming it aloud. I think it's important to read it on the page, but I think it's really important that poems be heard. And especially for those of us, every writer has a different process, but I really hear the poems in my head when I'm writing them. And so when I'm writing, I will write so many lines, and then I have to stop and I have to read it out loud because I have to hear it, and I have to, for the rhythms and the music, the internal music of the poem. And so for me, it's a chance to share it the way that I heard it, right, when I was writing it. I also think it helps a poet because you hear how and see how audiences respond. You know what they respond to most enthusiastically. If you have humor in a poem, are they getting the humor, right? Are they laughing where you meant it to be funny?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot that feedback from an audience can give. You know, do they seem confused? You know, by the time
Right.
you're at the end of the poem, like what, right? And
Right.
often readings will come with like there'll be a little Q&A afterward. And so from their questions too, I also learn quite a bit. So yeah, I think it's helpful, and it will sometimes reading aloud will just hearing myself read it aloud in front of an audience will have me going back to the poem and doing another revision.
It's so
You
very,
know?
yeah. And I've done the same thing where, hey, I can maybe switch this around, or maybe the poem as it exists is 2 minutes long. Maybe I can make it into a 4 minute or 5 minute. Not that time is important or length is important, but sometimes you can add extra perspective and things like that. What does it mean to write it? I'm fascinated by the idea that you're a bilingual poet. I guess would you call yourself a bilingual poet?
Yeah, or I write, yes, but I write, I a lot of times write interlingually. I like that word, or translingually, because instead of writing I mean, I have many poems all in English. And in any book of mine, I'd say that probably 2/3 of the poems are all in English, or at least half of them, right? But then I also write a lot of in interlingually, moving back and forth between Spanish and English, in what somebody might call Spanglish or Inglañol, because I grew up with that mix of the languages, and so, uh, yeah, I guess you could call it that. I'm bilingual. And what was the question you had?
Well, the question is, how does that give a certain extra dimension to the poetry? I guess is the direction of my question. Is there
Yeah,
some power that you have at expressing something in Spanish, or maybe like you have 3 or 4 lines in Spanish and then you go back to English? I've seen some
right.
of your work that does that, and does that give you an extra power? I know there's a folk singer that I listen to, Richard Shindell, who uses Spanish in his songs, and it's beautiful how he
Yeah, I
places.
mean, first of all, I think uh, it reflects the language I heard all around me when I was a child. So sometimes when I'm writing a poem that's about those times, I will do that because it really maybe brings them more to the fore, you know. But I think I also get like for me, the musicality of a poem is really important. And so when I'm mixing the languages, I'll get like an interlingual rhyme, right? Or interlingual alliteration. There's
Right.
something so kind of fascinating about that, I think. Uh, and and so there's that it can enhance the poem in that way. Also, there are in both languages, in both English, in any language, right? There are many words that just they translate. Like you can look them up in the dictionary and find a translation, but they don't translate fully, right? Because the nuances of the word in that particular language, right, don't translate over with that dictionary definition, right? So all the kind of nuances or emotional
Yeah.
resonances around the word aren't the same. So sometimes I have to keep a particular phrase in Spanish because in English it just doesn't capture. You know, one of my favorite poets, Francisco Alarcón, he's passed away now, but he had this poem in which there was a line, "Un beso is not a kiss." And technically, if you look up beso, right, in an English-Spanish dictionary, it translates as kiss.
Right.
And that's how you say kiss. But the word beso is full of so much emotional resonance and like, it's more passionate
Right.
than, right? So
Okay.
I think, like I laugh. I used to tell my students, we always tell poets to use the thesaurus, and yes, you should. However, there really is no such thing as a true synonym because each word has its own connotations, right? And so, yeah, I think sometimes that's why I'm doing it. It's just part of who I am.
Yeah, you strike me as a poet that where nuance is extremely, and the specificity of your language is just amazing. What you just read to us and some of the specificity there, and the words. I had to look up a couple of words that that you used. But that's cool. I mean, there's the analogy of, Eskimos have how many dozens of words for the word snow, right? And to attract the exact right nuance, you might need Spanish or you might need English, and that the fact that you have both of those as at your disposal is really cool.
Yeah, and once in a great while, I'll write completely in Spanish. And then translate the poems. So that one you mentioned that ended up having the choral music composed for it, and then was performed at Carnegie Hall, which was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
That I wrote in Spanish, Poema para los tintunteros. And tintuntero is just a word I made up.
Okay.
For drummer. It's actually an ode to drummers. It's like an homage to them. And when you read the poem, you know that, because I'm talking about, congueros, the people who play the congas, bongoceros, the ones who play the bongos, bateristas, that's how you say drummer in Spanish. That poem was written in Spanish, then I translated it to English. And here and there I do that as well.
That's awesome. I kind of fell in love with Spanish. We went to Mazatlan, my wife and I, and then 4 of her siblings and their spouses. It was a very special trip, and stayed on the beach. And I tried as much as I could to speak at least the basics. But it's just a beautiful language, and it's just I see it almost as like a romantic kind of language.
Well, it is. It is one of the Romance languages, right?
Right.
Italian, Spanish, but yeah. And so things are most often spelled the way they sound, right? Unlike in English.
Right.
There are a few letters that can be silent in Spanish, but it's pretty much right. It's spelled the way it sounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're with Brenda Cárdenas, the current Wisconsin Poet Laureate. I told you I was going to ask about this. So do you have further plans beyond December here of this year? What are your plans on some of your major projects?
Oh, well, first of all, the laureateship, you're really an ambassador for poetry in the state, to say it in the shortest way possible.
Right.
So there's a lot of readings, talks, workshops, and I go from place to place in Wisconsin and do all of those things depending on what the organization or library or whatever it is, the hosting group asks for. So I'll be continuing to do that. There's also a project that the Poet Laureate is asked to do, and it's actually part of the application process that you describe what your project will be. And my project is an ekphrastic relay between poets and visual artists. So if you remember the old game of telephone when we were kids, where you would say something and then it would pass to the next person, and then the next person would add something, it would pass, right?
Yeah.
So what this is
Okay. Yes, we're with Brenda Cárdenas here, the Wisconsin Poet Laureate. And Let's, we actually just lost our phone feed. Let's try and get it back again here. There we go. A little excitement with our show here today.
Hello,
Oh,
Jeffrey?
hello. Yes, we're back. We're gonna just keep rolling here. This is the
Sorry about that. I'm so sorry about that.
no
My
no
husband
worries.
tried to call me, and I was trying to hang up on him.
No
And
worries.
accidentally hung up on you.
No worries. Well, that's part of the thrill of a live taping here.
So is it still recording?
Yeah. Let's keep rolling.
So what I was trying to explain about the project is I have a website. I had a website built for it, and I divided the state into 7 regions. And what all one has to do to participate, and everybody is welcome, whether you are a beginner poet or visual artist, or whether you're somebody who has published and exhibited, that doesn't matter. All ages are welcome. Okay.
Great.
And you just go to that website, and there's a way that it shows you how to register in your region. And then if you look at, you go and you become part of a group that is all of the poets and visual artists in your region.
Mm-hmm.
And you look, and if 10 poets haven't already posted a poem, you write a poem that is inspired by any piece of visual art in the world, and you post that poem. And once there's 10 there, then visual artists are going to register and come along, and visual artists are going to create a piece of visual art, photograph it, put it up on the website, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then more poets in the region get to pick a piece of that visual art, write a poem that is inspired by it, put that up on the website, and then more visual artists will come along. So I'm imagining this going the full length of my laureateship. And at the end, we'll see what we have, but all of it will be archived on that website as well. So right now, in some regions, there's quite a few poets signed up, and some of them have already posted their poems, right? What I need to do, my big task at hand, is to get more visual artists on board. I have some, but not as many yet. And so I have a big email list that I have to write emails and send them out to get the visual art. Because, of course, I know more poets than visual artists, right?
Right.
But getting the visual artists on board so that the exchange can keep happening. The exchange is, right? Because there'll be 7 of them going on throughout the state. So that's my big project. But there's some other wonderful things coming up. I was invited, I guess I was the first poet laureate to be invited by the governor's office to speak at the Martin Luther King Day celebration at the Capitol.
Wow, great.
The Capitol Rotunda. So I'll be writing a new poem and delivering it for that occasion.
I look forward to
and then
that.
There's another one coming up that's a collaboration between the Wisconsin Arts Board and the Wisconsin Public Instruction. And I'll be writing a brand new poem for that. And they take that poem, and then within our school systems, they do all kinds of things with it. So they do dance with the poem. They do music, both choral music and music without words, where they just create music to go. And they do, I think, art, all kinds of different. They take that poem and do many, many things with it.
Wow.
And so I have those 2 poems to write, and that for these special projects.
That's so awesome. This talk has gone so quickly. This a great show with Brenda Cárdenas. We're just about out of time. We had a little glitch in the show, but I'm just going to keep it because that's reality, right? And that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's such a great show. I'm going to keep it. Do you have a poem to take us out with today?
Sure. I have a very short little one. This is called Deportation.
Okay.
We were all once citizens of snow, born beneath the stretched skins, taut tarps of our sisters and brothers, stateless citizens of desert doorways so low, our kin had to bow to greet us as we entered the arc of this world. We each held a bowl of slate blue sky, and wherever we carried it welcomed us home. See, There are no nations, no papers, no passports. There are no quotients in this genius heritage, only jungles of bougainvillea that reach like bodies to the morning sun. Iguana tails smacking still air. Ladders, only ladders to other levels of love.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, Brenda Cárdenas. Thank you very much. The best of luck
Thank
to
you.
and maybe we'll catch you down the road here and see you maybe toward the end of your. I can't wait. I cannot wait to hear your Martin Luther King
Oh,
poem.
great.
So I'll be too. Maybe it'll be live on TV. Who knows? So I'll be.
Yeah, they have it's not supposed to be an homage to MLK. They actually have a theme they want me to write on.
okay.
But it goes with the day. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you, Brenda Cárdenas. Much luck to you, and it's my honor just to meet you. And I wish you only the best of luck with everything.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We'll see.
You have a great holiday.
You too. Have a happy holiday time, and maybe talk to you in 2026.
Perfect. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay.
There's Brenda
Bye-bye.
Cárdenas, State Poet Laureate of Wisconsin, joining us on Poets Have Something to Say. Thanks for joining us.